Olympic gold medalist, undisputed world champion, enough said.
He won that fight. Everyone in the arena knew it. Everyone watching at home knew it. Even the man standing across from him, the undefeated, untouchable Julio César Chavez, knew it. But somehow, the judges didn't. On September 10th, 1993, the world watched one of the greatest pure boxers to ever live put on a masterclass. A boxing performance so clean, so brilliant, so undeniable that even decades later, the footage still doesn't look real. And then boxing did what boxing so often does. It stole the moment. It robbed a deserving man of the biggest win of his career. It rewrote history in front of millions. And in one shocking decision, it broke something inside Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker that would never fully heal. Because this wasn't just a bad scorecard. It wasn't just a controversial night. This was the moment an entire sport betrayed one of its greatest artists, live on the biggest stage with the whole world watching. And the craziest part? This robbery didn't just cost Whitaker a victory. It changed his career, it changed boxing, and it exposed a truth the sport still refuses to talk about. Today we're going back to that night, the night boxing cheated its own masterpiece, and we're revealing how it happened, why it happened, and the devastating silent fallout that shaped the rest of Sweet Pea's life. Because once you see what really went on behind those scorecards, you'll never look at this fight, or this sport, the same way again. Pernell Whitaker didn't learn to box in a legendary gym. He learned to survive on the streets of Norfolk, Virginia, a working-class neighborhood where fights erupted without warning and hesitation got you hurt. So Whitaker developed something most fighters never do: instinct. Not the instinct to hit harder, the instinct to not get hit at all. He learned to slip punches by fractions of an inch, to move just enough to make grown men swing at air. It wasn't showboating, it was survival. By the time he wore Olympic gloves in 1984, that survival instinct had become artistry. He dominated the Los Angeles Games, won gold, and made professionals look amateur. But even then, boxing didn't know what to do with him. His style didn't fit the sport's definition of excitement. He didn't brawl, didn't trade in the center of the ring, didn't give fans the blood and guts war they thought they wanted. He just made you miss, over and over, and then countered clean, sharp, effortless. And judges hated it. In 1988, he outboxed Jose Luis Ramirez for the WBC lightweight title, made him look slow, made him look ordinary, and still got a split draw. 6 months later, he had to beat him again just to get what he'd already earned. That's when it became clear. Whitaker's biggest opponent wasn't the man in front of him. It was the judges behind him. Because boxing in the late 80s and early 90s was obsessed with one thing: aggression. Walk forward, throw hard, even if you miss, and you win rounds. Whitaker did none of that. He was too advanced for a sport that still measured greatness by how much damage you could absorb. Long before the Chavez fight, Sweet Pea was already fighting 2 opponents, and when the biggest fight of his life finally arrived, that second opponent would destroy him. But he kept winning anyway. He moved up to lightweight and dismantled everyone. His defense became legend. Opponents threw combinations and hit nothing but air. Slip, pivot, counter, smile. Whitaker moved like water slipping through cracks. Impossible to catch, impossible to predict. It was beautiful. It was surgical. It was dominance at the highest level. He beat Greg Haugen. He beat Azuma Nelson. He rose to welterweight and kept winning. By the early 90s, purists called him the best technician alive.
Floyd, be honest in your heart.
Pound for pound elite, ring IQ unmatched, footwork like poetry. Fans who understood boxing saw the genius, but mainstream boxing, they didn't know what to do with him. ESPN highlights showed knockouts, not defense. Casual fans wanted violence, not artistry. To boxers studying the craft, Whitaker was a genius. To judges who wanted brawls, he was a nightmare. He had everything: skill, resume, credibility, except the one thing boxing refused to give him: respect. But that was about to change. At least, he thought it was. Then came the call: Julio César Chavez, 87 wins, no losses, the biggest star in boxing, a Mexican national hero, untouchable, promoted by Don King, the most influential man in the sport. Chavez wasn't just undefeated. He was a brand, a machine. Every fight made millions. His record was marketing gold. A loss wouldn't just hurt his career, it would damage an empire. When the Whitaker fight was announced for September 10th, 1993, excitement exploded. The slick genius versus the relentless warrior. Precision versus pressure. Intelligence versus heart. Over 65,000 fans packed the Alamodome in San Antonio, one of the biggest US boxing crowds ever. Mexican flags everywhere. Chants of Chavez shaking the arena. a cultural moment. But behind the scenes, the truth was darker. This fight wasn't just about who was better. It was about who boxing could afford to lose. Whitaker was the better boxer. Experts knew that, but Chavez was the bigger business. He had Don King. He generated money. He carried the WBC. A Chavez loss threatened millions. Everyone in the industry understood. This wasn't just a fight, it was a business operation. Whitaker walked into the ring knowing he had to be perfect. Anything less meant the system could take it from him. But on fight night, something unexpected happened. He wasn't just winning, he was dismantling a legend. Whitaker gave the performance of his life, and boxing was about to punish him for it. Round 1 set the tone. Chavez came forward like he always did. Pressure, volume, aggression. But this time, the target wasn't there. Whitaker slipped the jab, pivoted out, circled away. Chavez tried to cut off the ring. Whitaker was already gone. He loaded up the right hand, the punch that had ended dozens of nights. Whitaker saw it, leaned back just an inch, and made it miss by a mile. Then, snap. A clean counter left that landed flush. Round 1 to Whitaker, clear. Round 2 looked worse for Chavez. Jab, slip, counter, pivot. A rhythm he couldn't break. Every time he planted his feet, Whitaker was on a new angle. By round 3, frustration showed. Chavez lunged in, swinging wide, trying to land something, anything. Whitaker leaned back just enough, rolled under the hook, stepped out of range, and snapped a right hand straight down the middle. Chavez's head popped back. The crowd gasped. Round 4, Chavez finally tried to pour it on. He backed Whitaker to the ropes, unloaded a heavy right hand, the kind of punch that had broken men before. Whitaker dipped under it like he'd seen it in a dream. As Chavez stumbled past, off balance, Whitaker turned, planted, and fired 3 fast jabs right down the pipe. Chavez's head snapped back 3 times in a row. For the first time all night, you could see it on his face. Doubt. The pattern continued. Whitaker's jab was a laser. Chavez's face reddened, swelled. His punches were missing by feet, not inches. And Whitaker, he started smiling, hands down, leaning in, giving Chavez his head as a target, daring him to try. When Chavez bit, Whitaker slipped inside, rolled away, and spun out, tagging him with a sharp combination on the way out. It wasn't just winning, it was humiliation. By round 7, commentators were stunned. This isn't even close. Whitaker is making Chavez look ordinary. How do you score a single round for Chavez? His corner panicked, yelling instructions, begging him to cut the ring. But it didn't matter. Every punch Chavez threw, Whitaker seemed to have already read it. By rounds 8 and 9, it wasn't a fight. It was a lesson. Whitaker would back toward the ropes just enough to invite pressure, then slide out at the last second, pivoting and leaving Chavez swinging at shadows. CompuBox had Whitaker outlanding Chavez nearly 2-1, with almost double the accuracy. The undefeated monster, the man who had steamrolled opponents for a decade, was being made to miss like a beginner. The final bell rang. Whitaker raised his hands. The crowd, overwhelmingly pro-Chavez, gave him respect. They just watched something extraordinary. Chavez walked back to his corner, head down. Everyone knew. Whitaker didn't just beat him, he embarrassed him. And that kind of humiliation has consequences, because everyone saw the truth, except the only 3 people who mattered. The arena buzzed with energy. Fans were on their feet, talking, gesturing, replaying exchanges with their hands in the air. But they weren't really debating. There was nothing to debate. Whitaker had won, clearly, undeniably. He stood in his corner, gloves half off, sweat dripping, breathing heavy, the quiet smile of a man who had finally proven himself. After years of being undervalued, after the Ramirez robbery, after being told his style didn't sell, he'd just given the performance of his life. He'd made an undefeated legend look human, in front of 65,000 people, in front of millions at home. For one brief, beautiful moment, everything lined up. Respect, validation, redemption. It was right there, within reach. Across the ring, Chavez sat on his stool, staring at the canvas. His cornermen were quiet. They knew, the crowd knew, the world knew. Justice, after years of fighting the system, was finally about to be Whitaker's. But boxing has a way of turning truth into silence, and the truth was about to be buried. Ladies and gentlemen, we go to the judges' scorecards. 115-115. Confusion. Another 115-115. Shock. Then 115-112 for Chavez. A majority draw. Whitaker didn't win, didn't get justice, didn't get what he earned. His face collapsed, not with anger, but heartbreak. He put his hands on his head and looked up, like he was searching for an answer that wasn't there. Chavez didn't celebrate. He knew. Commentators were furious. Journalists disgusted. The numbers told the truth. Whitaker outlanded him 188-93, doubled his jab accuracy, doubled his power shot accuracy. No metric favored Chavez. But the draw wasn't incompetence, it was protection. The sport could not afford for Chavez to lose. So boxing did what it always does when business conflicts with truth. It rewrote history, in front of everyone. Whitaker left the ring that night a different man, not physically, but emotionally. Something had been taken that could never be returned. Media called it a disgrace. Fans demanded a rematch. The WBC defended the decision, refused to overturn it, refused an immediate rematch, and just like that, the moment was gone. Whitaker kept fighting, kept winning, but something inside him had dimmed. You could hear it in interviews. Frustration, bitterness, exhaustion. I won that fight. Everyone knows I won that fight, but boxing doesn't always tell the truth. That's not confidence. That's defeat, the emotional kind. His later years were difficult. Addiction, financial struggle, personal battles. The man who once was the best boxer alive fell quietly into decline. You can't blame everything on one robbery, but you can't ignore it either. When a sport steals a fighter's defining moment, it doesn't just change a record, it changes a man. Whitaker never got the mainstream respect he deserved, never got the endorsements, the fame, the financial security his talent earned. And when the world finally gave him his flowers, it was too late. On July 14th, 2019, he was struck by a car and killed at 55. Tributes poured in. Legends praised him. Fans replayed his mastery. But all that love came after the fact. And years later, Whitaker admitted something heartbreaking. He never watched the Chavez fight again. It hurt too much. On September 10th, 1993, the world didn't just lose a fair decision. It lost a moment where artistry should have beaten politics, where truth should have mattered more than money. Whitaker gave boxing one of the greatest performances ever, and boxing gave him nothing in return. But greatness doesn't disappear because a judge's card says it didn't happen. The footage still exists. The truth still exists. He learned to survive on the streets of Norfolk. He survived every opponent he faced. But on this night, even survival wasn't enough. And Pernell, Sweet Pea Whitaker, no matter what boxing tried to take from him, will always be remembered as one of the most brilliant, most beautiful, most tragically underappreciated fighters to ever step into a ring. If you want to see another story where boxing changed a fighter's life forever, watch this next video.